Hi everybody, my name is Jeremy Siskind. I'm the author of the Jazz Piano Fundamentals series, as well as the book Playing Solo Jazz Piano, and the crowd goes wild. Okay, I had somebody ask me for a follow-up to a video, a second level, a second installation, a second episode of a video that I made called something like starting with a rhythm, using rhythms to improvise, building a rhythmic vocabulary. That's exactly what it's called, building a rhythmic vocabulary. And this draws on something that is in improvisation exercises in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1, which is that for a lot of beginning students, they don't start with a vocabulary of rhythms to improvise. They're just kind of thinking so much about notes that's difficult. And rhythm is highly associated with articulation. So if you're trying to figure out which notes to accent, where to put space, where to play legato, having a vocabulary of rhythms is going to be really helpful. So let's first just briefly kind of reflect on what was said in that video to the best of my recollection. But what I like to do to start students is start with eighth notes and start with eighth note patterns that start and end off the beat. And so this is my go-to beginning rhythm. And this could be placed anywhere in the measure, but it's an offbeat eighth note, followed by an onbeat eighth note, followed by an offbeat eighth note. And I call this the Perdo Rhythm, because you guys may or may not know the tune Perdido by Juan Teasel and made famous by Duke Ellington. And so what I recommend is that you practice improvising using only this rhythm, placing it at a few different points in the measure. So just like the tune Perdido, we could start on the and of 4. So if, for instance, I'm playing a blues in F, I might play 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm being very specific about the articulation as I do that. So here I would articulate do, va, di. Ooh, I did that completely wrong. Let's try that again. Va, do, dit. The va being a little bit more accented and the dit being an accent with a short note. And those would all be legato together. So va, do, dit. Va, do, dit. So listen again. Try and make that dit really pointy, really nice and short. Now, I'm starting with a tune. For those of you who are really in this, like book 1, it's your first 6 months of learning jazz, you might want to start with just a triad or a 7th chord. So think about F major and play only notes. Let's try it from the F major triad. So I'm only going to play Fs, As, and Cs for now. But I can mix them up however I want. 1, 2, 3. Is that going to be the most fascinating, interesting improvisation ever done? No, but we're learning something. And, we have to get these basics down before we apply it other places. Or we could try to use all 4 notes of the F dominant 7th chord. So and if you start getting a little bit bored with that, You can add in things like grace notes and turns, right? So grace notes, I would usually use the note a half step below one of these chord tones. Right. A turn, that's going to be much more complicated. Okay, so that's going to get a little bit more complex. You can watch, I've got some videos about turns if you're interested. And then I think the other rhythm that I suggested was trying to do the same thing, but adding one more pair of eighth notes. So that somebody I think called this the straight note chaser rhythm, which is pretty good. And here our articulation would be va do dit. And this would also be all legato. Now with both of these rhythms, I'm starting them right now on the and of 4, but we could move them to different beats. So we're like, again, to me it's about forming vocabulary. So for instance, this very first Perdo rhythm, whoa, I don't know what happened there. My apologies. So this is that Perdo rhythm. So I could also start it on the end of 1. 1, 2, 3, 4. Or the end of 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can move them around to different beats, making sure the articulation stays the same all the time. Now, we could do a lot of other things. We could mix quarter notes in. So, for instance, here's a rhythm that starts and ends on an offbeat, but has a quarter note in the middle. And this is important because quarter notes are articulated differently. We want to not tie, or not slur, I should say, not make the quarter note legato to the following note. So this is going to be va da do dit. You could tell it's summer and my brain's not working as fast. Va da do dit. Or we could put the quarter note on the offbeat. Da da da. So now this is going to be on the downbeat. It's going to be do dot dit, do dot dit, do dot dit, and just the first two are going to be legato. I should be consistent and put that on top. Okay, so adding in quarter notes is going to be another big piece of your rhythmic vocabulary. So now, let's say hypothetically, you're bored with these rhythms, or maybe you just want a little bit more connection. Where do I go to get rhythms? Well, I go to transcriptions, right? Transcriptions are basically our shared vocabulary in jazz. And so this is Louis Armstrong's Potato Head Blues Solo. Louis Armstrong, of course, good at many things, but if I had to choose one thing that I think he's great at, maybe I'd choose rhythm. So we could start by taking just a one measure rhythm, like how about do 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 gadon, the very beginning of the solo, so great. So then we're going to isolate that rhythm. We're not going to care about the notes, and in fact I might not even care too much about like where that rhythm starts, Do da da ba do. Do da ba da. Ooh da ba da. Wait, because there's ooh da da. Yep. And then I could do those same things. I could play it through a blues. 1. I could try starting it on beat 1, 2. Right. Or I could really take a full 2-measure rhythm. Like let's take the very last thing he does. I love this rhythm. Dot 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 dot. A lot of notes on the beat. Right? There's 3 notes on the beat, then 2 notes off of the beat, then 2 on the beat again. But it's kind of interesting that both of those start on beat 2, right? Dot dot ga dot ga dot. Okay, so same thing. It's a little bit more complicated now, but we can definitely work on a complicated rhythm like this. 1. Right, so the whole idea here is that you want to do so much repetition here that when you're improvising and maybe you're thinking about scales, maybe you're listening and interacting with the drummer, maybe you're playing a tune you never heard and you're trying to follow along, that these are the rhythms that you can draw upon, that your fingers, your brain, your ear are going to naturally go towards. And so you're starting to build up this vocabulary of rhythms that are very jazz appropriate and you've also got the articulation under your fingers. So that's kind of the idea here. So if you felt like this lesson was a good level for you, Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1 is going to be a great place to start. If you're curious to learn more about this kind of swing articulation and you want to see these sorts of things in writing regarding rhythmic vocabulary and practicing rhythmic vocabulary, that's all there in Jazz Piano Fundamentals Book 1, which, by the way, I think is my bestseller. If you watched this far, since we were looking at some rhythms from Potato Head Blues, why don't you say something about a potato, something about a spud, mashed potatoes, baked potatoes, boiled potatoes, anything you can think of. All right, everybody, take care.